We're up. We're loaded. All right, Dave, take it away.
Take it away, Dave.
Yes, I apologize for that. You can hear me, yes?
Yes.
Great, great. Yeah, so I was logged in with the browser and I just went to the app and everything looks great. So awesome. So thank you for having me. We're going to talk a little bit about, actually, we're going to talk a lot about zero trust. But I want to put this into a context that I hope everyone can appreciate and can identify with. We hear a lot about ransomware and phishing attacks, and I know that you guys have talked a lot about that today. I want to take a little bit different of a spin and just talk about the concept of zero trust, but I want to put it in more of a real world scenario of saving lives. But first and foremost, just to throw out my resume here a little bit, just so you know where I'm coming from. I am not a salesperson. I don't do sales for a living at all. I am a security researcher. I'm a security expert, and I work with organizations like MIS Alliance, and I also work with a strategic partner of theirs, SOCSoter. And we help protect organizations from cybercrime. And my background comes from working with many of Fortune 500 organizations and helping them do this very same thing. I was a cyber warfare officer in the US Air Force, tasked to NATO for 15 years. And one thing that might be pretty fresh in some of your minds, maybe not so fresh, hopefully not so fresh, is I was the guy that came into TJX, Marshalls, and Home Goods in 2007 and helped them clean up a lot of the stuff that happens when they lost 45.7 million credit cards. I do a lot of writing, and I've also been the Chief Information Security Officer for one of the largest defense contractors in the world. I wrote some books, and I do a lot of writing for magazines on cybersecurity. And I've run some of the largest security operations centers in the world. So what I like to do is take a lot of this experience and really help to bring it home and help people identify with these risks and these threats to make it something that's tangible. A lot of times, we hear about all these risks, we hear about all these threats on TV, but we don't necessarily know, how is it going to affect me? Or maybe they don't want anything I have, or I'm too small, or I don't have any money. Well, let's dive in here. And just so you know that I'm coming from a security background and not a sales background, I want to just level set with everybody that anything can be hacked. There is nothing out there that has a silver bullet. If there's a device that's running hardware and it's running software, you really only need 4 ingredients to hack or crack that device. And I'm going to give you those ingredients and you can be your own hacker today. Number 1 is you need some time. So you need to research these things. You need to understand them. You need to read the manuals. You need to do your homework. And if there's a specific product that you want to get into, whether it be a television or a manufacturing device or someone's laptop, with enough time and some of these other ingredients, you will get into it. You need some money. So a lot of the tools and things that you need in order to get into these devices cost money. There's a ton of what's called open source and freeware out there and available. But a lot of times even time costs money. So it's not always just free, but there's a lot of tools and a lot of technology out there that you can buy that will allow you to get into a lot of these devices and a lot of these networks. And you need motivation. So clearly someone who is motivated at getting into your system, they have time and they have money, right? I mean, what else do you need? Well, you need something like this, and this is called a JTAG. And I know that this is probably very technical and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but 99.9% of all hardware, I don't care what it is, a television, a hard drive, your computer, Any device that's out there, a refrigerator even, will have something like this connected to it. And this is an interface that's used for diagnostic purposes when the engineers are building devices, they're building computers, whether it's phones, whatever it is, they have something like this. And if you can connect to it, you are on the inside of the computer without passwords, without security controls, without anything. It is directly on the motherboard or the main system and allows you to access any piece of hardware. So the point of going through this and explaining this to you is that physical access will negate almost any security control. And that's why when you go into a lot of organizations, they have badges, then they've got, card swipes to get through doors. Because if you're a manufacturer and you're selling products, you know what this is. And if someone can get your hands on one of these products, then they can connect to this port. And then what do they do once they connect to that port? Well, they have free reign of the system. And with free reign of the system, without passwords and any security controls, they can find vulnerabilities. And once there's a vulnerability that they find that they know that they can exploit, they walk it back. They start to figure out, okay, what if I don't have the JTAG? How do I exploit that vulnerability? What do I need the user to do? Do I even need a user to do anything? Or is the vulnerability so bad that I can exploit it externally? Maybe it becomes a phishing email. Maybe it becomes something on the network that I can launch and just have it connect. But once you have that access, you can see everything, you can do everything, and then it's just a matter of time to figure out how to weaponize that particular vulnerability into something that can attack an infrastructure. So once you weaponize it, you can then start to use it for remote exploitation. So the physical starts to become virtual. You start to walk away further and further and further until the point of where you can start to launch an attack from half a world away. So I want to put this in terms of a medical device. And I do a lot of medical device security researching. And there's no other devices out there that you can really think about how serious a cybersecurity incident can be. We often think about, oh, my laptop or my server or my desktop or my phone, but those aren't really the key critical systems that we really need to think about when we look at a whole ecosystem of devices. And these days, if you just look around your house, you're going to find a ton of devices that are out there that all have potential vulnerabilities that an attacker can take advantage of. Again, I mentioned TVs, and you've heard of IoT before. But we're going to look at MIoT, medical device IoT, because medical devices are very serious pieces of equipment, and they're computers, just like your laptops, just like your desktops, just like your servers. So what is a medical device? Let's define that first. A medical device is anything that does not achieve its purpose through a chemical action or metabolism, meaning it's not a drug. So an example of that could be a toothbrush. And when you think about this, right, a simple toothbrush, a basic toothbrush, is a medical device. But now we get very complicated toothbrushes that do all kinds of things. They know how long you're cleaning your teeth for. They are smart, and they're interacting with applications that run on your phones to tell you how long you're brushing your teeth for. You might even have some of these that you give to your children so that way you can monitor how often they're brushing their teeth. These are really simple medical devices, but it also gets to be very complex. Something like a radiotherapy system. And if you look at this picture, you can see it's not just one computer. There's a whole series of computers just in this room that would treat a patient. And something like this, from a security perspective, really scares me. But from a patient perspective, it scares me even more. And it's not because necessarily of the cybersecurity implications of what's in this room. It's because if I'm in this room and I'm a patient, they want me to look up at the ceiling and pretend that I'm somewhere else, which means that this is a pretty big deal. This is very serious. And if this device here has a cybersecurity issue, it is life-threatening. So let's get our hands on some medical devices and let's hack them. Well, all we need to do is go to eBay. And this is the same for anything, right? If I want to hack a TV, if I want to hack an Alexa device, if I want to hack whatever it is, I can go to eBay or I can go to Amazon or I can go out to the local store and I can just buy it. And I can strip it apart and I can get to that JTAG device. And here you can see there's a simple medical device, $249 shipped. I don't need to have a license. I don't need to be a doctor. I can just get it. I can even get bigger ones. I can get a lot of them. And I can even get parts and pieces and logic boards. I can even get other devices that have potential safety risks to them. And again, I don't need to be licensed to buy this. I just have to have the money. I did a little research and I wanted to see what it would take for me to get my hands on a pacemaker and see if I can, do something from a security perspective to impact that pacemaker. And I was kind of taken aback when I did the research, because when I searched for pacemaker, this is what I found. So apparently there's a part on a tractor called a pacemaker, and there's also a boat called a pacemaker. That was probably the most thing that surprised me. But here you go. I found a cardiology pacemaker for $1,200. So now if I can get my hands on this, again, now I have physical access, and it's just a matter of time for me to be able to find some kind of vulnerability and walk that vulnerability back and make it remotely executable. So what's the first thing that you're going to do when you're getting your hands on a medical device? Well, I want to bring this point home, and I want to bring it home in a funny yet serious way. This picture that you're seeing here is of a pregnancy test. And these hackers took it and they reconfigured it, they reprogrammed it, and now they're able to play Doom on it. So think about that. This is a simple medical device that's designed to do one thing. A positive or negative result is the only thing that you really care for this particular device to do. But they went to the store, they bought it, they brought it home, and they figured out how to reprogram it for their purposes. And now they could do whatever they want with it. I mean, obviously, this isn't the greatest video in the world, but it really shows you how you can take something that has a non-intended use and make it used for whatever it is that you want. So let's move from that physical world to a virtual world, right? So when we go back to those four things, those four motivations and money and things, right? We have spent some time, we still have money, we still have motivation. Now let's exploit. Let's take all this stuff that we've done, all this information that we've collected, and now let's move to exploitation. What do we do with all of this? Well, before we actually get to that point, we got to look at the traditional network. And what I have here is a picture of what that traditional network looks like. We might have a server. We've got a bunch of workstations. Maybe there's a mail server. Maybe there's printers, basic stuff that you might find. But there's a lot of things that are missing on this traditional network. Things that you might automatically be looking at and saying, oh yeah, I know what's missing, right? You're missing your antivirus. You're missing a firewall, right? You're missing all the things that you would need to do a traditional network layered protection, your spam filtering, your VPN access, your multi-factor authentication, your backups, and your user awareness training. And we've seen this picture over and over and over again. My point in going through all this is that organizations that get compromised, that get breached, every single one of them has had an antivirus, and every single one of them has had a firewall. They've had a lot of these things already. So what's really the difference? If they have all this stuff and they're still getting breached, what do I do? Well, let's move from a traditional network to the zero trust network. But when we look at that traditional network, it's really not a traditional network anymore. It's a network of networks. It's multiple networks. It's multiple interconnected networks, right? There's a lot that's going on here now, more so than there has been in the past. And every single day, we become more and more connected, and we become more and more reliant on other networks to provide us information and services and data. So the context of a traditional network almost doesn't even exist anymore. So when we think about the traditional security approach, we almost have to toss that out the window as well. So let's define what zero trust really is, right? So the traditional network and the security models that operate, they operate on an assumption that everything inside my four walls, everything that's in my office, everything that's being used inside my company is trusted. My employees are trusted. All the computers on my network are trusted. All the phones and TVs and everything that I connect to my network is trusted. But it can't be trusted. Zero trust means that you have to move your protections closer to the resources. You can't trust that employee's phone. You can't trust your own computer. You have to make sure that when you're laying down the security components that you need to protect your business, that you're doing it at the asset, at the individual device, at the network, at the cloud. Everything has to have all protections within a resource. And even inside of a computer, you might have additional zero trust barriers. One application might not necessarily trust another application. The security concepts that get defined in zero trust becomes its own ecosystem. It becomes a holistic security concept, and it has to be woven into the DNA of your network, because the traditional concept of networks between your four walls just doesn't exist anymore. So let's go back and let's look at that traditional network again. And now that we know that this really isn't a traditional network, let's lay on top of it all those things that we talked about before: the firewalls, the antivirus, the intrusion detections, the VPNs, right? Now we have all this stuff coming together, but is it really a network, or is it a hospital? And are these really networks, or are they networks of networks, or are they departments? And when you start to extrapolate all of this out, you can really start to see the complexity of what we have to deal with. And every single one of these little departments, and they might not be so little, could be considered the same as a small business. They operate in four walls. They have what they believe to be traditional networks, but they all individually need to be protected. So this is something that from a security perspective, you might have seen before. And if there are security people on the call, they've seen this before as well. You don't want to be the egg of security. And really what we're depicting here is that you've got this hard outside shell and the soft GUI inside, which is really, from a security perspective, your firewall and your antivirus. It's just not enough anymore to have just these two things protecting your business, whether you're a large enterprise or a small business. So what you need to start thinking about is every aspect of the business and how you need to layer in a defense in depth strategy. And I've got a picture here of a castle because it's very similar to that. If you think of a castle and you think of all the different things that are designed around a castle and how to protect that castle, it's very much the same concept when you're looking at protecting your business. You have to put defense in depth around the business, and you need to look at what it is that you have, right? It's not just about the individual endpoint. It's about the entire ecosystem. How is one device talking to another device? Is that one device supposed to talk to that other device? What data do they share? What applications do they have in common? Are those applications from device to device supposed to talk to each other? How many hosts do I have on my network? What is my network? Is my network the salespeople that are working remotely? Is it the accountant that's working from home today? Is it my manufacturing floor? Is it all of it? So when you think about your network and you think about your infrastructure as a whole, you have to think not just about the individual devices, but the entire network. So you have to have your defense in depth strategy of endpoint protection, your network monitoring, but then also you can't assume that your resources, that your data is going to be protected in someone else's network, like a cloud. You have to monitor that cloud infrastructure as well. And all of this needs to be monitored and managed 24/7 because the adversary doesn't sleep. You need to have some kind of security operations center, someone who can look at all of the data, look at all the indicators, look at all the different signs that there is a potential attack on the way. And that attack may not necessarily be from some adversary in a third world country or halfway around the world. That attack could be just a simple user doing their job, but not realizing the negative implications they might have on the company with doing that job, like the wire transfer and the fraud that you guys talked about before. So today, we have another level of trust that we need to think about. It's not just a trust of assets and data and the network. It's a company to client contract. It's a trust between you and your customers and the customers you're doing business with. The customers need to trust that you have their best interests at heart, that the information that they provide you, that the content they provide you, which could be names, addresses, telephone numbers, could be something that is important to them that that you have to protect. And as a company, you need to manage and defend your infrastructure to the best of your ability and your budget. And that means different things to different people, for sure. But organizations like MIS Alliance is going to help you with that, because one of the things that they do is they allow small businesses to punch above their weight. If you're an accountant or you're a manufacturer, you're not IT, you're not security. These are highly skilled resources, highly skilled and trained people to look at the bits and bytes and to understand at a very technical level how these things operate. So that way they can spot the issues, they can spot the troubles, and they can make these things non-issues. I will tell you that in all my time, when I look at companies that have suffered massive breaches and companies that have only had a minor security incident, the difference between the two has been the people who are managing and monitoring their infrastructure. because no matter what security tools you deploy, they're only as good as the people who are managing and monitoring them. They're only as good as the people who are taking the time to do the care and feeding of those tools and making sure that they respond appropriately when something goes bump in the night. So just to kind of round things up a little bit, and I know I went really, really fast with some of this, but when we look at what the attackers can do with physical proximity to a device and how they actually take that, we'll walk that back, and how a concept of zero trust makes things harder by making them go through so many loops to get there. We have to think about the medical device. We have to think about not just medical devices, but manufacturing or anyone else that has anything on a network or an infrastructure where there's a safety concern. And it could just be a simple computer that's attached to a device. Because with a perfectly timed attack that spares no expense, that has malicious motivation, will succeed. And one life lost is just way too many when it comes to something that is preventable. So that's really it for my presentation. I hope that was a little departure from a standard, pitch and cybersecurity, ransomware is sky's falling type thing, and just help put things into a little bit more of a tangible perspective where, everything can be hacked. Everyone is a target. And having great partners like MIS Alliance is paramount to getting you to a point where you don't have to actually worry about these things. Let the experts take care of it for you. Thank you, and I'll take questions.
David, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I love that the picture of the egg and the shell. That was really compelling imagery to let us know about the penetration levels. That was great. David, we do have a question here from Ashley Anderson, and you might have gone on over this already, but she wants to know, what are the benefits of zero trust? What are the top 3 benefits of zero trust?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with zero trust, really what you're trying to do is make it harder for the adversary. So, again, go back to the picture of the castle with the moat. The more hurdles you have, the deeper the security you have, the harder it's going to be to allow those attacks and those exploits to get in. So not only that, but you want to try and have as much opportunity to be able to see those attacks coming. So that way you can perform a remediation, or you can stop that attack while it's in flight. So the more points you have, the more tools you have, the more monitoring and management you have, the easier it is to prevent those types of attacks.
That's so true. So
Yeah,
true.
good answer.
Yeah, very good answer. I've got also a couple of good questions. Your piece had brought in a bunch of really good questions rolling through. So I've got this one from Ryan Freeman. How simple or complicated is it to implement zero trust?
That's a really good question. It's a question that I would urge you to maybe sit down and have a conversation about, with MIS Alliance, because it really comes down to what your infrastructure looks like. And you need to have, that conversation to say, what does it look like? What do you have? What do you need to protect? And it almost becomes a real, security architecture and design type conversation, because it's not the same for everybody. Different networks, different companies will have different things that are important to them, different types of data. They're storing data in different ways. They're using technology in different ways. And you need to take all of that into consideration. So there isn't really a simple guide or a book. You need to have someone that really understands your network, your infrastructure, and is able to partner with you to really make sure that all those things are taken care of in your infrastructure and apply that zero trust concept.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
And that is very hard to judge. I mean, you really have to go through and assess the organization and company, see what the infrastructure is, see what their hardware exists in their network. And today in the world of hybrid working and working at home, that really throws another thing into the puzzle. And so, you know, it takes a lot of thought. And at MIS, we're willing again to sit with you and talk about zero trust on any level and in any circumstance, and do what's best for your organization and help you to get set to that point.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah,
Great.
lot to take in.
Want to.
So we have another question here by Nina Cruz, and Nina wants to know, are passwords obsolete and what's taking their place?
That's
Do
a
we need
great
passwords?
question. Passwords are never going to go away. I know there's a lot. I know there's a lot of organizations out there that say, you know, let's kill the password. But really all they're doing is replacing the password with something else. So even when you have your iPhone and it does facial recognition or it does your fingerprint recognition, it's still a form of a password. You have to have a password on everything. What you can do though, is you can start to look at deploying technology that makes the passwords less intrusive. And those are things like single sign-on. Those are things like, you know, two-factor, multi-factor authentication that happens not based off of a number, but maybe based off of other things in the environment. And I know that MIS Alliance has a lot of those technologies they can deploy. So if you're asking the question because you're finding that passwords are so cumbersome because everyone is requiring them today, then I think there's a lot of technology that can be deployed to make it seem like passwords will go away. But at the end of the day, passwords in some form or format will always be with us.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, so true. And there's a lot of different solutions out there, and there's a lot of different views on what's better than other things. And one of the things we recommend here at MIS is make sure that you use a password manager.
Absolutely.
It really is important to do that.
You can't keep your passwords in your phone in the notes anymore. You've got to really get serious about it and have a password manager.
You can't, you know, so we'll help you along with that. We got another question. This is from Trish Patone, and she's saying, I work from home and zero trust seems too overboard for home work. Do I really need to use zero trust for my company?
Zero trust has a lot of different forms. It comes in a lot of different forms. It's not like you need a rack of technology in your house to accomplish this. There's a lot of software that you could use. It could be maybe just having someone look at the configuration of your wireless router at home. You know, you have a lot of technology at home, and they do, you know, a lot of these manufacturers do try and make it as easy as possible to take these things out of the box and be enjoying them in 5 minutes. But I would encourage you to engage organizations like MIS Alliance to even look at your home network, because there might be some things that you can do to really strengthen that infrastructure without having a lot of that other stuff that we're talking about. A lot of that other infrastructure does need to be there, but maybe it can be there in a way that you don't see it in your house. But when you're connecting to your company's network, you might be going through a VPN. You might be using that password manager that's supplied by your company. There might be a lot of security monitoring in place that you don't even see, but it's all taking place behind the scenes. But I would definitely encourage you to reach out and talk to someone about the security of your home network, because these networks are becoming huge these days.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
And if you look at your network today, your home network, it's probably larger than most businesses were 10 years ago.
I know, it's true. We have so many devices and so many Alexa shows and
Oh, definitely. I mean,
Google
our
Homes
cell phones are more powerful than the computers were in size, as well as what it does, you know, in the 60s and so
Yeah.
forth. So, I mean, it's just things have changed so much. And last question here. This is from Hector Zayak. And he is asking about passwords. So he wants to know whether or not it's better to have a completely complex password that you're gonna forget, or he's also heard that it's better to use like a paraphrase or a phrase. Is that true?
Yep, good question. When you think about passwords, certainly having a complex password is important just because it's not easily guessable. And there's a lot of technology out there today that hackers can use to guess passwords. But more importantly, the company that's storing that password has to have a lot of security controls in place to make sure that the password that you're using and all of their customers have secure password management for whatever resources they have. So if you have a website that requires a login, or if you have a domain controller and you're running Active Directory, that those passwords are secure. But honestly, for me personally, just to give you my personal opinion, I use a password manager. And I don't know any of my passwords. I really don't. I make sure that my passwords are at least 24 characters. They're complex, special characters, numbers, and I have so many of them. And I can't remember a single one of them, but I only have to remember just one. And that's the one password that gets me into the password manager. And that's what makes things so much easier. So that's what I would recommend is get a password manager and work with, again, I keep on saying this, but work with MIS Alliance to get those types of technology in place because they can make it seamless across your entire environment. And they can even, right. And they can even do things like single sign-on where those passwords kind of happen in the background.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Dave. You were a wealth of information,
Very
and
much so.
I was taking notes in the sidelines here.
Yeah.
You really shared a lot of great tips. So thank you so much for your time and for coming on board today. And we learned a lot.
Yeah, we really did. And I'm sure all of our attendees have learned a great deal. They can take everything that we've talked about today, including what you've presented to us, apply that to what they're doing, and they're going to protect their data and their assets that much more. And again, MIS, our partners, we want to work with you. We want actually you to run your business without having to worry about running IT or security. You shouldn't have to worry about that. And we can do that for you. So you can make your company a success and we can keep you safe at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. And I hope that putting things in context of a medical device was eye-opening. And the next time you go to your doctor's office, you can ask them if they're using Zero Trust. And if they're not, then give them MIS Alliance's business card because they can certainly help with that.